Lulu, let's start with you. We watched it tonight several times. You gave Vance 5 opportunities to say Trump lost the election. What was going through your mind as he pushed back the second time, the third time, and on and on?
I think one of the things that's really important to understand is this is one of the key questions of this election. We've seen in polls, we've seen over and over voters saying that democracy is also on the ballot. People are concerned about this issue. 2020 is on their minds, and Donald Trump has refused to acknowledge that he lost that election. JD Vance is a hair's breadth from becoming the vice president of this country. And so pressing him on this issue is important because we know over and over again that it is a lie, the big lie, at the center of what Donald Trump requires people around him to say. And so by pressing him over and over again, really there is just one question and there are two answers. The question was the one that I said, and the answer is yes or no. And the fact that he couldn't give a yes or no, I think, is extremely telling. And what I'm doing there is really try to make sure that the voters understand the position that JD Vance holds, and by extension, the Trump campaign.
Right. And he said that you were using a slogan when you just presented him with these facts that, yes, indeed, Trump lost.
Let's dive into this interview featuring JD Vance and Lulu Garcia Navarro, a liberal New York Times reporter. In this interview, she tries to get JD Vance to talk about whether he believes Trump lost the 2020 election. For some reason, the mainstream media keeps bringing up the 2020 election as if that's what we should be focusing on heading into 2024. The media is stuck on rehashing 2020, hoping to use it as a way to attack Trump. But let's be real. Most people don't see this as a major issue going into the next election. No matter how much the media tries to make it a big deal, it's not going to move the needle. Remember when JD Vance debated Tim Walz and the media thought Tim Walz won just because he asked about the 2020 election and Vance didn't take the bait? Well, that didn't change anything as the polls kept shifting in Trump's favor. Now here we are, and the media is still trying to use this issue to smear the Trump campaign. It's almost funny how desperate they've become, bringing up January 6th and the 2020 election again, but JD Vance doesn't fall for it. He refuses to be dragged into a debate that most Americans don't even care about anymore. So let's get into this interview where JD Vance once again avoids the gotcha attempt by the New York Times reporter.
In the debate, you were asked to clarify if you believe Trump lost the 2020 election. Do you believe he lost the 2020 election?
I think that Donald Trump and I have both raised a number of issues with the 2020 election, but we're focused on the future. I think there's an obsession here with focusing on 2020. I'm much more worried about what happened after 2020, which is a wide open border, groceries that are unaffordable. And look,
Senator,
Lulu,
yes or no?
Okay.
Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election?
Let me ask you a question. Is it okay that big technology companies censored the Hunter Biden laptop story, which independent analysis have said cost Donald Trump millions of votes?
Senator Vance, I'm going to ask you again. Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election?
Did big technology companies censor a story that independent studies have suggested would have cost Trump millions of votes?
Senator Vance, I'm going to ask you again. Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election?
And I've answered your question with another question. You answer my question and I'll answer yours.
I have asked this question repeatedly. It is something that is very important for the American people to know. There is no proof, legal or otherwise, that Donald Trump did not lose the 2020 election.
You're repeating a slogan rather than engaging with what I'm saying, which is that when our own technology firms engage in industrial scale censorship, by the way, backed up by the federal government, in a way that independent studies suggest affect the votes, I'm worried about Americans who feel like there were problems in 2020. I'm not worried about this slogan that people throw. Well, every court case went this way. I'm talking about something very discrete, a problem of censorship in this country that I do think affected things in 2020, and more importantly, that led to Kamala Harris's governance, which has screwed this country up in a big way.
Senator, would you have certified the election in 2020? Yes or no?
I've said that I would have voted against certification because of the concern that I just raised. I think that when you have technology companies—
The answer is no.
When you have technology companies censoring Americans at a mass scale in a way that, again, independent studies have suggested affect the vote, I think that it's right to protest against that, to criticize that, And that's a totally reasonable thing.
So the answer is no. And the last question, will you support the election results this time and commit to a peaceful transfer of power?
Well, first of all, of course, we commit to a peaceful transfer of power. We are going to have a peaceful transfer of power. I, of course, believe that peaceful transfer of power is going to make Donald Trump the next president of the United States. But if there are problems, of course, in the same way that Democrats protested in 2004 and Donald Trump raised issues in 2020, we're going to make sure that this election counts, that every legal ballot is counted. We've filed almost 100 lawsuits at the RNC to try to ensure that every legal ballot has counted. I think you would maybe criticize that. We see that as an important effort to ensure election integrity, but certainly we're going to respect the results in 2024, and I feel very confident they're going to make Donald Trump the next president.
Ask the Democrats, did Al Gore lose the 2000 election to George Bush? A lot of Democrats still believe that Al Gore actually won that election. They refuse to say George Bush won fairly. Now, is it important for us to know if all Democrats believe that Al Gore lost fair and square? Probably not. I bet if you asked this reporter that same question, she'd say, nah, it doesn't matter. It's no big deal. So if that's not a big deal, why is the 2020 election such a big deal? We can't change the result. Biden has been president for 4 years, and as JD Vance is pointing out, he's been a disaster. That's what we should be focusing on. But the media wants to distract you by bringing up the 2020 election when it's no more important now than 2000 or 2016. Ask Hillary, did she lose fair and square in 2016? And don't bring up Russia or Facebook ads. Did Hillary Clinton lose fair and square? Most Democrats would have a hard time admitting she lost without blaming something else. But no one questions Democrats when they claim the 2000 election was stolen from Al Gore or the 2016 election was stolen from Hillary. Yet, when Trump questions the 2020 election, suddenly it becomes a huge issue, and we're expected to keep talking about it. While Hillary never fully admitted she lost in 2016, what's also interesting is how JD Vance brought up big tech censorship. Democrats claim big tech didn't affect the 2020 election, but now they're crying about Elon Musk and X, saying it could influence the 2024 election. They acknowledge social media's role in elections only when it doesn't go their way. Everyone saw how big tech tried to sway the 2020 election for Joe Biden. It's obvious. Democrats are hypocrites about election denialism. They've been denying elections for years, yet they expect Republicans to admit defeat without question. This double standard is ridiculous, and it's wrong to demand people say an election was fair when fraud or other issues could have played a role. That's the real problem here, and JD Vance calls it out.